Yes.
Okay, the regularly scheduled meeting of the Grants to Higher Education Committee of the Board of Architectural and Engineering Examiners is taking place in 308 Featheringill Hall at Vanderbilt University in Nashville, Tennessee. And notice of this committee meeting was posted on the board website on September 25th, 2017. May we have a roll call, please?
You may. Susan Ballard. Robert Campbell.
Present.
Philip Lynn.
Yes.
Blair Parker.
Here.
Frank Wagster.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. John, you want to kind of lead us a little bit here? Our new business that we have starts with the distribution of grant funds. It's on page 78 of your
Right.
iPad.
Yeah, this is under the board meeting materials.
Yes.
We've actually got two batches of documents that you'll look at. The first is on meeting materials, page 78. This just shows the allocation of grant funds by profession. And it shows that, that as of July 1 of this year, architects were 19.2% of our total registrants, active and inactive registrants. They're the only ones that pay a registration fee, so we don't count the retired registrants that don't pay a fee. So accordingly, they would get, for the architect, $64,416 of a $335,500 grant amount. And then it breaks it down for each profession. Landscape architects 2%, interior designers 2%, engineers 76.8%. And that $335,500, of course, the total appropriation is $350,000, but the remaining amount, $14,500, was set aside to fund a 1% minimum, which I think a couple of years ago that was set at 1% of the total grant amount distributed. So it was $3,000. Since we're distributing the full $350,000 this year, I just took the liberty of setting that 1% amount at $3,500. And based on the amount the interior designers received, it's pretty close to $14,500 that was needed to fund that 1% minimum for the interior design programs, with the small remainder going to landscape architecture, which we'll get into in a moment. So that's where that $335,500 came from.
Right. And I know everybody's aware of this. We've been getting emails and so forth. Has anybody got any problems with how that's been done? I mean, I don't personally. Okay.
We're talking about the actual application.
Distribution.
Oh, the distribution's fine.
Yeah, and the distribution itself, the materials that I sent to the grants committee, that's in a separate document on your iPads, not with the meeting materials, and it shows the actual request from the schools, and then the first page is a spreadsheet that shows a recommended distribution to each school, which I can go over that real briefly if you want to.
Okay.
Get my copy. Here it is. So again, the total distributed based on percentage of licensees was $335,500, with that additional $14,500 to fund a 1% minimum for programs, with the remainder going to the smallest program, which is landscape architecture. So the architects end up getting $64,416, and that's divided between UT Knoxville and UT Memphis based on their enrollment numbers. Half of it's based on an enrollment, half of it's distributed equally between those two programs. The landscape architecture, of course, there's only one program, so they get the full amount plus the remainder, which gives them $6,920. Interior design, of course, that they have such a small amount that for them to get the minimum amount, we have to provide some additional funding for each program. So with that additional funding and the number of programs they have, they end up receiving $21,000 in grant funds. And each program just gets that minimum amount of $3,500. And then engineering, they get $250,664 to again, for those, half of it's divided equally, half of it's based on enrollment. And that was done several years ago, because if you base it strictly on enrollment, which is how we originally did it, the small programs just got a paltry amount, basically, when it was distributed through that methodology. So by distributing half of it equally, that ensures that every program gets a significant amount of funds that they can actually use to benefit their students.
I thought when we started this program, John, freshman memory, there was a cap on those big schools.
Yeah, there was. We did set a cap originally, yeah, to ensure that the big schools didn't get too much of the money, I suppose. But then we moved towards dividing half equally, and then the other half based on enrollment.
Mr. Chairman, one of the things we discussed in the grant committee was talking about to help as a form of outreach, we have changed to allow them to use the money to help pay for the FE exam. I was wondering maybe we should start to really measure not the passing rate of the FE, but it's more how many people enroll and sign up to take the test. Maybe one measure to get this incentive to promote the licensure outreach. We have never put our hands on it. We talk about it a lot of times.
Yeah.
Because I can tell you right now, UT Martin is still the only school that will not issue your certificate until you pass your FE. And I understood from UT after they changed it to the computer-based testing, UT has not making it mandatory for people to take the FE. Only the civil engineering department had to take it. It's a 1 credit hour course that is required to take it beyond a transcript, but not anymore, ever since we went to the computer-based. So I think that when we're not making a decision today, the grant committee needs to hold them in and see where they are, because eventually we say, yeah, we're going to allow them to use the money towards taking the FE. But what other effort are we encouraging them to stick with what we committed to them? Understand? I'm trying to hear myself talk, but we have a ringing. We get to the edge, you got a ringing tone.
Well, did I understand you to say that UT has quit requiring
They
that?
used to have required 1 hour credit for all engineering students on the transcript, but not anymore. But civil engineering department still require that.
Still do. What was their thinking there?
Well,
Any
because
idea?
of computer-based testing and because it's, the fees gone so much. It's computer-based testing is about $200 and something dollar. And be interesting to hear how they report when I go to the AVET visit.
Yeah.
I think that's another good reason to see how you go down there and talk to them face to face and see what the needs and stuff are. Because are we not doing, is there not an FE review course that somebody else is looking at doing?
I do know Lipscomb does that because since I've been up here last year, they asked me to come up here.
Oh, it was Lipscomb that I heard was
Yeah,
doing
Lipscomb's still doing it. UT still do. When UT requires a 1 hour credit hour, you have to go to class and you have to pass it. But now I think they just do it. I know University of Memphis does offer every year. It's no charge to student, but you're from the outside, you pay $125. But I do know CBU does that too, Christian Brothers University. The smaller one, Union does that. That's why Union pride themselves for having 100% passing rate, because they might have 5 kids, but prepare them. All 5 will pass it the first attempt.
Yeah, I would anticipate if you did base at least part of the distribution on like the percentage of students sitting for the FE. I think that's what you were suggesting, right? Well, I think Hal Balford had suggested that at one time as well. Part of the pushback on that from the schools might be that with the change in the application process, it's difficult for them to track which students are actually sitting for the exam because they no longer have to submit an application signed by the school to sit for the exam like they used to. The students can just go directly to NCEES, register for the exam, and take it without their schools even knowing that they're taking the exam.
But I thought that in order for the school to refund these people back, they had to let the school know.
Yeah, for that they would, but not all schools are reimbursing them for the exam costs.
I think we need, because the committee has over the years, this grant committee all started with Ken Green, went to the AVET visit to find out that the laboratory equipment is very antiquated. So started not pay the salary to another professor, but by then architecture came along and said, hey, we got more needs in terms of architecture software and on and on and on. At one point in time, the private school was not even included.
Yeah.
I think we've been more than generous to, I think, to require the dean to do something like that. It is our way of encouraging them to stay engaged with us. Because a lot of the bigger schools, they have a grant writer. This is like an application. They're putting for grant. And I'll be honest with you, if you tell me the kind of money we give to UT is peanut, nothing. I mean,
Well, I think that's the problem, the issue, Philip, is when you look at the bigger schools, these grants are good numbers. I mean, you know, when you look at $20,000 or whatever it is, for almost 30 for UT Knox, the numbers are, yeah. It seems like a lot of money, but I think in the overall scheme of things, when it's not enough money to have leverage to get them to do exactly what we want them to do. And I would still, in lieu of that, I would still like to continue reaching out to NCAAS, John, to see about taking part of these grant funds to pay for, directly still try to pay for these FE fees for students from Tennessee or whatever. I know there's some logistics to that, but we asked that question 3 or 4 years ago, and your big buddy Davey decided that we couldn't do it.
David McDonald.
Yeah, big buddy. So, but I still don't understand why they couldn't invoice or some. There should be some systems to still allow us to do that, and that way we can directly control that, Philip, and we don't have to worry about trying to get some sort of leverage on a UT or somebody, because we're just not going to get leverage on most of on the bigger schools.
So, yeah, you know, it's funny you said that. NCAAS, to me, my simple mind, when you register, they will ask you, what institution have you attended? Because they had to verify that you are in good senior standing.
Yeah.
So to tell me that they cannot run a report just to say, I'm not a programmer, I'm not trying to tell a computer engineer what to do.
I'm with you, Bubba. I mean, it's just one of those things where it seems to be another query on the database that is done all the time. I just think they don't want to do that. But anyway, I mean, the thing is, and I'll shut up after this, but using these grants to get leverage, to get them to do exactly what we want to do, is, for most cases, not going to happen. It may get our foot in the door to give our message, but it's not going to be like we can walk in and say, I want you to paint all the rooms blue because we don't like that they're painted green. It's simply our way to try to give back to professions to help make them better. So,
Well, let me ask you guys this. If there was how much does it cost to take the FE?
225 currently. It's going to reduce to 175 next year.
And so you've got all these engineering students that are close to graduating. Or
You're
have
senior standing.
senior
I
standing.
mean, that'd be hard for you to pass the test when you're a junior standing, because most of the FE exam requires a lot.
Right.
Yeah.
And so their entire deterrent to not taking it is $225.
well, I'm with you. I know what you're saying.
I mean,
But that's,
if we gave them all that, how would that increase the number of test takers, FE takers?
I think it's the tipping point in the excuse continuum. You know, I don't really want to take it. I don't really want to take it. Oh, hey, here's a good excuse for me not to go take it. And they use that as a reason to do that.
Yeah. And the few institutions that are requiring that to graduate, that's a pretty good incentive to go take the exam.
Right.
But the bigger schools have avoided that for whatever. I say bigger schools. You know, I know UTM does it, and does Union do that? So
I don't know.
I think they do. Anyway, neither of them are what I call big schools.
No, you're right.
Yeah. So why aren't the big? I mean, why isn't Vanderbilt and why isn't UT Knoxville?
Well, Vanderbilt will tell you it's because most of their engineers don't go into engineering. Which that may be the case. I don't know, but that's what they'll tell you.
Well, then why do they need to take that?
And UT will tell you that almost the same thing, except for civil engineering. We don't think that our engineers, you know, it's different than architecture. If you graduate from architecture, you're going to go into an architecture program.
Not necessarily.
Well, I mean, but you got a little
We
bit
don't
more
have
standard.
we don't have an FE exam.
Yeah, but you got more standard way to go, but, you know, and I've heard this from Dean Oberholzer, he said, you know, half their graduates their engineering graduates end up in Wall Street or going on to medical school or something. And then the other, you know, maybe 10% that actually do stamping stuff.
Right.
So.
But they have a lot of seniors sit for the FE. It's a high percentage. I don't know exactly what the percentage is. But they do a good job encouraging them to take the FE.
And that's got to be but I think the thing is, I'm not trying to combat Phillips Hill, is I go back again to where I don't know that we can use that as leverage to go make the universities take it. We just have to continue to encourage them to encourage their students to take it and make it part of the fabric of their university. I don't think the money's going to do that. I think it's just continuing to tell them, do that.
Another angle to me in my mind that I do know that when I went to UT Martin last year on the event, I went there, man, it was in October. I remember the long road I had to drive. It was terrible to drive there.
Yeah, it's boring. It's
no easy way to get. But one of the questions that people ask, they look at the result, the AVAC team, they look at the result. And the dean, I remember the dean stood out to give an overall presentation. He talks a lot about why they're such a stickler or not wanting to issue the certificate because this is one way to get people's attention. And somebody asked the question, is that considered an impeachment of Comm, meaning that preventing somebody to get the job? I said, no, but when you sign up with our university, you sign a dollar line to be my student, you know that this is your requirement. This is one of the requirements they can stipulate in as a form of graduation. So to get the attention, I think AVAC needs to step in and talk about it. So I just don't know how to get to that AVAC mindset right now. We used to have a guy by the name of George. He was pretty good. So.
I thought it was interesting, 5 of the schools, the engineering schools out of 11 that submitted proposals requested to use a portion of the funds to help subsidize the FE exam costs.
Yeah.
So it's almost half of them that are using the funds, a portion of their funds for that purpose. In Vanderbilt's one of them. They've actually been doing it, I think, from the very beginning. They've been using some of their funds for that purpose. So I thought that's encouraging, at least, that a lot of them are using some of the grant money to encourage licensure. And actually, one of the schools that's not using them for exam fees is using a portion of the funds to buy equipment to help with an FE review course, and I think that's UT Chattanooga. So
Equipment.
yeah, it's equipment.
Maybe books, man.
Or some iPad screen projector thing or something.
Possibly.
Maybe students have their own computer.
Close to the hill.
But anyway, Mr. Chairman, what I'm thinking that the story is that while we talk about this grant, I think we need to keep a conversation in front of us. There's at least two things to keep in front of us. One is the use of the funds for FE. The other one is encouraging the professor, the school to, hey, the grant committee is talking about a different way to actually, even though our money may not be much, but what's 1% of 49,000 for UT is nothing. We take away 1%, so what? But it's money. If money is the motivator, then we're doing this in a very wrong fashion. So.
I've talked to several of the engineers, like Helgeson at UTM, several of the deans, and even though we look at it and say, you know, what we're distributing is a drop in the bucket to what their monies are, I've never seen any of them that weren't really appreciative of the money and put it to the best use they can find. So
And most of them match it up with something to go
leverage
you know,
it. Yeah.
It makes their 20% match or something on
Right.
a bigger grant or whatever. So that's good. I mean, that's
Right.
Oh, and by the way, just to follow up, UTC, they're using it to buy Microsoft Surface Pro tablets, Surface pens, and a laptop computer for an FE exam review course and online courses.
It makes sense. I mean,
Yeah, that's what they put in the proposal. Very good.
okay. I'm happy with the way that John did the presentation. John may not be engineer, but he thinks quite logical. Excuse me, Mr. John, I don't mean it. I'm beginning to be more like you now. Talk when I'm having. This is Robert Campbell's opinion. This is the Lim opinion.
You usually don't express it as well, so I think.
I'm not a bubble boy. Gonna get killed.
I will assume this subcommittee meeting, or committee meeting, part of the outcome of the meeting would be that we move to approve the grant and bring it to the board tomorrow. So
I make a motion,
Do we
we
have a
approve
motion?
the grant distribution as presented on the spreadsheet that John prepared for us.
And I'll second that.
okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. And there is a item here on discussion of the special projects grant. Could you kind of,
Right. The guidelines do allow a portion of funds to be used for special projects. We did not do that this year because I think there was disappointment over the number of schools requesting to use funds for that purpose last year. It didn't seem to go over very well. Maybe the amount was set too low. I'm not sure all the reasons for that.
$20,000 is very low.
Yeah, so I think the reason that was included was to discuss if you wanted to maybe try to restart that next year, maybe increasing the amount to see if that generates more interest, or just continue using the funds as we did this year.
can you give us a little background on the one that we did?
Yeah, it went to, it was a joint project between UTC, Architecture, Engineering, and Interior Design, and also UT Knoxville's College of Architecture and Design, to develop a low-income community design studio, I think, in
That's right.
an underprivileged section of Chattanooga, which they've got their property. They've, I think, done some renovations there. They're well on their way to proceeding with that project. And I think we'll be getting a report from the final report next year on how that's proceeding, because the guidelines give them 18 months to complete the project, so we've still got a while before we get the final report from them on that. But they did receive the full $20,000 for that project.
Well, how did the timing work? I know that was one of the discussions we had originally, was when, like, it being issued or approved at this meeting, and then once it gets into them,
Yeah, and
it takes a year and a half to get.
right, and that took longer because we had to, normally we would have them submit their proposals earlier so that they could be approved at the October meeting. The distribution approved it like we're doing this year. That's our normal timeline. But in that case, with doing the special projects last year, we had to revise the guidelines to describe how we were going to distribute the funds and the reports that would be submitted and so forth for special projects. So we weren't able to distribute the funds in October. They were distributed in December, which gave us only 6 months till the end of the fiscal year to get the contracts drafted and get the money distributed. And that has been a problem for some of the schools. I'm working with the attorneys in our department that draft contracts, Stephanie Crenshaw, you probably know her, to maybe revise the contract language a little bit to give them more time to expend the funds.
Yeah.
Because the way we've drafted them in the past, the purchases have to at least be initiated before the end of the fiscal year, which is kind of difficult, especially for the special projects.
Right.
I mean, we've worked through it, it's been okay, but there's been some heartache about that.
But they usually need to be actually starting, most of them start their fall semester in August. And so before they can get organized and develop their plan, it has to be after that, and it really doesn't give them much time between then and October to get all that together.
But I mean, we've been doing this since 2002, so shouldn't take them by surprise. Although it seems to with some of them each year, it's like, oh, I didn't know what the deadline was for that. It's like, we've been doing this since 2002 every year, so they need to prepare in advance for it, I think.
Well, let me piggyback off that a little bit. I think that's the right path, is to try to get these, make that process a little simpler, and because, timing is difficult in a lot of different things, and I understand that. But do we want to consider on special projects, you mentioned the amount, I'm going to just kind of stumble around this, but it seems like the project in Chattanooga is something that's probably very worthwhile, okay? I mean, I read the thing and the write-up on it, and it looked really good, but it almost looks like on these special projects, John, that we might want to make those a 3-year commitment at $20,000 a year or something. I don't know what that looks like exactly. And maybe we do one of these every 3 years or 4 years or something, but we make it a bigger amount, but kind of cash flow it out over a 3 or so year period so that we can get a bigger, again, I go back to the project in Chattanooga, which may be totally different, but year one, they're going to go in and maybe renovate a building. Well, you're using volunteers, you're using all this, and the amount of stuff you can physically get done in a year is different when you do it that way, as opposed to going out and hiring a contractor that's got a profit motive to finish it. So the amount of, just something to think, I don't even know if it's discussion or thinking about, but is there a way to maybe talk to the administration a little bit and say, hey, we'd like to dedicate, we think some of these projects are out there, but we'd like to set up $100,000 or $50,000 or whatever the amount is over a multi-year period, and you win this one, and it gives you 3 years to spend $60,000, $70,000, $80,000, $100,000, I don't know what the right number is. We've got the money, and if they're doing stuff like this, the one in Chattanooga, it seems to me to be something worthwhile. Spending an extra $40,000 or $50,000 is not going to impair us, and I don't know. I mean, I know how state budgets work. July 1 is July 1, and
we have to expend the funds within the fiscal year, but I'm working with our legal people to determine, can we put some language in the contracts to give the schools more time?
Well, see, I just talk and see if there's any way to give us some flexibility to make these multi-year, multi-year type projects. That may generate, because those projects tend to take a long time, just because most of them are using volunteer labor and volunteer assistance. I mean, am I thinking right?
Yeah, I like what you're saying. I wonder if would the state be willing, if we commit to them for 3 years, the state approves this every year, are they going to say, yeah, we'll go along and make sure we approve it? They may pull it out next year.
Yeah.
We don't.
There's no guarantee.
We're not guaranteed it's going to be in the appropriations bill each year.
I want to let you know out front, I struggle over how we started, and I told Susan this the last meeting. Maybe it was not quite animated that I'd like to be, but I told Susan, I said, well, I know that we are going to look at special projects, good. But I struggle with this only benefits a very small portion of the community in terms of the school. In this case, UT Chattanooga and UT Knoxville get most benefit of it. Now, I'm not discounting the credit, but I think the way we do our fund, distributing the fund to the school is very fair and consistent across it. A special project. So I told Susan, I said, since we don't, first of all, there are 3 things I think is working against us. First, we don't have somebody full-time to review this project. To even make a meaningful recommendation to the board, saying, is project A better than project B or better than C? I'm not in a position to do that, because a lot of the time, number one. Number two, if you give somebody, let's say the whole project is $150,000, and we give them $20,000, it's peanut. It's nothing. And then they have another layoff. And then the most fun, the last most fun thing is, I just think this goes back to, if some school figure out, hey, this is the way to get another extra 20, 30,000 on the board, they can get very clever with that. And then long term, we'll diminish why we had this grant. Remember, I like to look at it as a big picture. Well, this grant distribution may not be. The big schools tend to get more money, but we have a formulation of that. Everybody gets a pie. Everybody has a share of the pie, so to speak. You know. But the special project, yeah, I just think I would be honest with you, Susan and I struggled even reviewing it and trying to give a meaningful recommendation.
Yep.
And Susan Miner at that time was a public member. She was going to try to help us because she was involved in a lot of the grants application for the Mid-South Economic Development Board, and then she went on boards. I think at this present moment, if you ask me today, I'm not. I think we should keep in mind this Philippines opinion. I would think we need to do what we're doing good. And then if there's a special project presented to us in the future, we should consider that. But to go out actively soliciting it, unless you're going to pay somebody full time that can really manage that fund, I think it's not going to be easy.
Yeah, if I remember right, the submissions that we had, the Chattanooga one was the only one that really fit.
Only had two.
Well, okay, the other one,
That's all we got.
The other one was to buy a big piece of
It
equipment.
was just another equipment proposal.
So it made it a pretty easy decision. But yeah, I'm not sure they had enough time to get together, and maybe they did and they just didn't do it, but to get together and have a worthy project.
We gave them extra time because we had to develop the guidelines. Because we didn't approve the distribution until the December meeting, so they had a lot more time.
Right. So maybe there's not a worthy project out there.
There are a lot of wood, just the amount of money we put in
Yeah.
is peanut. I mean, it's nothing compared to.
What you're saying is we don't put in limb type money.
That's right.
We just put in peanut.
Lim has.
Well, every other year we just put all the money in it. Have a special project.
Yeah, one special project.
Yeah, that would-
350, that'd get somebody's
That
attention.
would get their attention, I think, for sure.
And again, remember now, school projects are usually done by those PhDs and the graduate students. When they are on what do they care about? Graduate.
Yeah,
They're
research.
gone. Any practical application would be very few.
They're doing their research.
You know, I'm talking now. Thank you.
Well, I'm trying to figure out where we're going with this. If we don't have a special projects grant this year, what
For
happens?
next year.
For next year?
Yeah.
What happens to that money?
Well, we'll just
Just
distribute it.
redistribute
For equipment,
Yeah,
like
just
we
okay.
did this year.
I'm kind of thinking just from the discussion that maybe we just don't.
I
And
agree.
we see what the results that we get next spring
Yeah, we'll
or
be meeting with the deans.
see what
next
the,
year, too.
see what the report is, see if we think it
When's
was
the-
a worthy
the-
undertaking
Yeah.
and go from there.
I agree. I think that's a good choice.
Okay. So if we don't do anything, I guess there's no reason for a motion.
When's the next dean meeting? Is it April?
It's October of next year.
Oh, we'll get around.
You'll always be on.
The Return of the Ghost. And there's a movie called Ghost, isn't it?
Yeah.
The Memoirs.
And there is an item here that
Do we need to make a motion on that, or just for discussion?
I'm thinking if we don't do anything, there's no need.
Yeah, I just got down, we'll wait and see UTC's report next year and then reassess it at that time.
Are we going to the next topic? You know?
Yeah, I was headed that way. And that is, the next topic was the proposal to increase the grant appropriations.
Can I jump in?
Please do.
It is good for us to ask the administration, but I heard loud and clear from Mr. McComm that before you ask for any grant money, spend the money, number one, which I think we're doing it now. Number one. Number two, what I heard from him was that I would rather you reduce some kind of fee. As a result of that, we took away the FE, which has come out to about $4,500, $49. Very small peanut.
Yeah.
But on paper, we look really good, you know. So we should look. put it at rest for another year in my mind before we go back and ask for money. Let's say even we increase for, let's say ask for 50 more thousand. You split it up, UT will still get 28% out of the 50,000. So you split up, each one may get a few more thousand. Again, it's not going to make a dent. But however, I think we need to go back and revisit with Mr. McCormick or whoever is in charge of FAA, finance, FNA.
Well, probably our assistant commissioner.
With a Carter
first, Carter Lawrence, right?
To kind of educate him, bring him up to speed. It's the desire of the board to really want to increase the grant and lay the plan on before him and say, we agree with what McCormick said, but we've been waiting for 2 years. By year 3, we'll come back and we should not start from ground zero. That's what I'm saying.
Remember, we've got an administration change coming up as well. So.
When is the new administration?
2019.
Yeah.
November 20. You saying, John, you may not be around.
That'll be, November's the election, right? November 2018?
Yeah.
So then
January
2019 we'll have a new administration. So.
I might be
I
assistant.
think this we're probably may need to wait until the next administration comes in.
Yeah, I think that when Mr. McCormick came and argued a good case, we were involved in it. Susan was in the committee in the meeting. I remember it was in Nashville. He came down. We walked right. And then what? I think we all started with 175,000, but look at where we are now.
You know, I agree with you. I got the same message I think you did from his presentation. And it may be that, and I don't think we should probably ask for more money this next year. But maybe after we hear the presentation and it looks like it's of value, maybe the next year we go after 100 rather than extra 50. We go after 100,000. That would just up what we're asking by 50,000.
Yeah.
And maybe that would be an incentive for somebody. Or I mean, 100,000. I don't think anybody sneeze at.
I think McCormick was pretty clear that while your professions are like a lot of professions in the rate, that doesn't mean it gives you. We were trying to get into to spend down the general our surplus.
Yeah, and just looking at the report for this past fiscal year, and it did June this year, we had a reserve balance for the year of almost $300,000, even with our grants. And of course, that'll be probably a little lower next year for different reasons. Number one, we're spending our full $350,000 this year. We didn't spend that full amount last year. How much did we spend last year? $331,700. So we're spending the full $350,000 this present fiscal year. And we think our cost backs for legal services will go up a little bit. We'll talk about that
more
later.
expensive to hire Elizabeth.
No, they changed the formula.
They're changing the structure. A few boards. I don't know enough about it to really speak on it because I don't work with the financial end of things in our department. Our accountant would have to come in and give his explanation. But essentially, I think things were pooled before, and some of the boards have asked the attorneys to start allocating their time to see if they could reduce the fees for some boards and increase the fees for others that utilize legal services more or less.
Because it's been based on the number of cases, basically, in the past. Now they're going to be billing us by the hour, sort of.
Yes.
So it's a little different.
So that
may go up a little bit.
That's just what they're looking at, though. It's all proposed. It's not been. Nothing has been finalized. It's more of like a pilot program to show the boards that did complain what the cost really looks like if you look at it by the hour that each attorney on the team is spending instead of by looking at the number of complaints. Some of the boards don't realize that some of the attorneys that are working on the complaints, that's fine, but there's also the attorneys like me that are spending time amending the rules, doing legal research, taking phone calls with licensees, things of that nature. So really just kind of re-examining how all of legal is structured and how all the time is allocated to each of the different boards.
But even with that, I mean, easily we could increase our grants appropriation $100,000
Yeah.
and still have some surplus, because we got almost 300,000 surplus this year. Now, that's estimated. I should clarify that. That's estimated at this point. So we don't have our final cost back figures. That is what we have to pay the department. So we don't have those final numbers yet, but it'll still be, I'm sure, 250, 300,000, something in that range for our surplus this year. So, yeah, even with the grants, we're still drawing in a lot of money.
So, I don't know, Robert left, but it seems like the consensus is we're not gonna ask for additional monies.
I think
So
yeah.
there's no reason for a motion.
Yeah. You need a motion?
No,
No, just for discussion. I think it's prudent for us to work with the administration. They have been gracious to us. And there's right or wrong way to do it, but I think it's just the way to do it. Yeah. At this time.
Right.
For the committee to consider. That would be diplomatic.
Right. Is there any other business?
Did we review the grant guidelines?
Do we need to?
I don't know. They're on page 79.
I mean,
I don't know that
we
we
have
have to
them.
change anything.
No, we hadn't
but-
changed it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
probably not. I think we
No,
just
we
revised
didn't.
them.
No, we didn't start changing. I thought you just took the 1%. Is that part of written in there, the 1%?
No, that's not.
So you have changed the formula a little bit. So you want us to adopt it, or?
No, the actual distribution formula is not in the guidelines.
That's good.
No, that's at your discretion there. Yeah, we were just following what we had, the methodology we had used in the past.
That's key with methodology. That's right. Thank you.
Methodology.
Some of this stuff. I think. Anyway, if there's no other business,
You need a motion, did you?
that'd be nice, yeah.
Motion to adjourn, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Get up and leave.
All right.